Hey guys, Dylan here. Welcome to the 5th episode of my Blender tutorial series. As many of my followers already know, this video is the second part of the non-destructive hard surface modeling tutorial. So if you're new to this channel, I highly recommend you stop here and go back to watch my previous episode, in which I introduced a very simple trick for quick and dirty hard surface modeling. In the end of the first part, I explained the pros and cons of Arrimus method. And this time I'm gonna show you my improved versions, so you will have more options to solve different problems in different scenarios. But before we start, I would like to briefly introduce myself. I am a freelance 3D artist who makes CG for commercials and online promo videos. My clients include tech giants like Tesla and Tencent, as well as world top universities and institutes. I'm trying to build my channel and share the techniques that are used in real-world productions, but I can't do it in the long term without the help from you guys. As you can see, my channel is still very small and so far I don't get any profit by doing this. It seems that the algorithm never promotes my videos to potential audiences. Please help me out by smashing the like and subscribe buttons so I can keep creating more quality but free content for you. I really appreciate your help. So last time I mentioned two major issues that exist in Arrimus' original method. One is the poor performance regarding computer resources, and the other is the shading problem on some objects like cylinders. I'm gonna show you how to fix both of them using one simple solution. Then from there, I will show you more in-depth tricks to deal with more challenging scenarios that you may encounter in the future. One thing that is worth mentioning about all these methods is that none of them is perfect. If you use these tricks for quick modeling in complex scenes, you will probably notice some tiny issues here and there, like clipping mesh and weird shading. Because the main goal of using these methods is to concept and model something as fast as possible, and you have to make the decision whether these issues are acceptable or not in your case. Take my robot gunfight animation as an example. You wouldn't notice any issues on my robot model because there was no close-up shot to show those details and everything was moving with motion blur. In the making of CG, there is no issue if all the issues are not noticeable on the screen. It's that simple. So choose your workflow wisely. If the details of your model are demonstrated to the audience, then you better use the normal way of modeling to get the best end result. Let's start with this simple cylinder object, which already has Arrimus modifier set up. It shows both of the two major issues I mentioned previously. It generates way more polygons than we need on such a simple object, and the sharp shading on the side of the cylinder is not what we want in most cases. Let me duplicate this cylinder and explain how you can fix these problems. It's quite simple. Delete the first subdivision modifier that is in the simple mode, and replace it with a bevel modifier. Change the width tab from offset to %, and from here you can tweak the percentage and segments values to adjust the sharpness of your edges. Notice in this simple example, the limit method is totally fine to be set as angle. You can see the cylinder's topology is nice and clean, and at the same time the polygon is much lower than before. However, this is not the universal solution. We need to change this limit method in different situations accordingly. When you change it to none, it works similarly like the previous simple subdivision modifier, which gives you the global sharpness on all the edges. So we can see that the shading problem on the side of the cylinder comes back. When you change it to weight, you have to manually select the edges that you want to bevel and assign weight to them. So all the other edges will be excluded from the bevel modifier. This is my favorite method since it provides a better control on the mesh. And we will be talking about the vertex group method in a few minutes. Next, I will show you some examples of when and how you would use these different methods to get the best result. Let's go back to the original one, and let's say I want to cut a gap along this edge on the side of the cylinder. So we mark sharp and it doesn't look too bad. Now let's do the same thing on the one with the bevel modifier. You see the problem? It doesn't work well even if you try to change the bevel weight of this edge. So what should we do? Change the limit method, but not to none. That will bring back the shading issue. So yep, the angle method seems to be the best option. We got the mesh and the shading as we want, with great topology but less polygons. I know some of you may argue, why not just add some support loops? Well, that will be considered as destructive, right? Because later on, when you want to make some changes on this edge, you will have to deal with all these support loops as well. whereas we just need to adjust the edge loop itself in a non-destructive workflow. We are not finished yet because there are more challenging situations to test this method. Now let's imagine this cylinder is some kind of mechanical component, and we want to add a screw here. So we select these 4 edges and mark sharp. The screw should be a circle, not a square, right? If we change back to the weight limit method, the screw becomes a circle, but that ugly intersection issue comes back at the same time. Here's the situation. The weight method gives us the circle screw, while the angle or the null method gives us the better edge cut. So we're looking for a way to combine them in order to get both of the best results. This is when you need the last method, vertex group. Go to the Object Data Properties panel, create a new group, then only select the vertices on this edge and assign them into the group. Go back to the Modifiers panel and duplicate another bevel modifier. Change the method to vertex group. We did it. The first bevel modifier generates that circle screw, and then the second one comes in to fix that edge cut by only affecting the vertices along that edge. However, if you go to the wireframe view and look closer, you will notice that the topology is not as nice as before. This is why I mentioned earlier, none of these methods is perfect. You will have some issues here and there. But the real question is, are they noticeable on the screen in the end? Imagine after texturing and animating, you turn on motion blur, and this cylinder thing is somewhere far away from the camera like this. Who will notice your model has some tiny topology issue? Literally no one. Alright, enough playing around with the cylinder. Let's go back to my robot model and I will show you something more interesting. This is the actual modifier setup I used to model this robot. As you can see, it is different from the setup we discussed previously. Both the simple and the Clark subdivision modifiers are kept, and on top of them there is a bevel modifier. In the end, a decimate modifier is used to reduce the polygons. Basically, the bevel modifier and the simple subdivision modifier together generate more polygons along the sharp edges. The Clark subdivision modifier generates some roundness later on. Since we have enough polygons along the edges to form the overall shape of the mesh, it is safe to use the decimate modifier to reduce the polygons without losing the sharp edges too much. I would say, at least in this case, this method is way more efficient than Arrimus' original method. We created almost the same model using much less computer resources. Additionally, we can have more control of the sharp edges by tweaking the bevel modifier more precisely rather than changing the levels of the subdivision modifiers. By the way, I also used this method to quickly create a Sci-Fi Kriss Vector weapon model, which is available on my Gumroad if anyone is interested. Another interesting example that is using another slightly different modifier setup is my Hover Cybertruck model. For those who already downloaded it, you may notice that I didn't even use the subdivision modifier at all, because Cybertruck is supposed to have sharp edges all over the car body, and there is no need to cut any obvious gaps as I did on the robot model. But of course, if you want to modify the Cybertruck by adding more details, like edge cuts, you would add the subdivision modifier back for better shading. So play around with all these different methods to model different objects. Always be challenging to try and practice them in different scenarios. Eventually, you will know when and where to use them accordingly. But at the end of the day, just keep in mind, none of them is perfect. You have to decide if those tiny issues are acceptable or not. All in all, choose to use the methods wisely. Alright, as always, I hope this episode is useful, and you can also check out my other tutorial videos if interested. Don't forget to help me grow my channel by like and subscribe. I really appreciate that. Stay safe and always be creative, guys. I will see you in the next one.